folks, welcome to Xobin Talks. My name is Guruprakash Sivabalan. I'm the founder and CEO of Xobin, and I'll be the host for the day. Today with us, we have Ben Eubanks from Lighthouse Research Advisory. Ben is a very senior HR professional. He is someone many CHROs in the world really look up to. His insights, his books, his article talks and predicts a lot of HR trends. I've been following Ben for a long time. I've been reading his books, and he's been right many times. And I'm so happy to have you with me, Ben, today. Welcome to Xobin Talks.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here. Looking forward to a fun conversation.
Great. So usually in Xobin Talks, we invite HR professionals, leaders from different industries, right? Today, however, we are trying to understand a lot about AI and HR tech, something that I'm really passionate about, which is why I volunteer to host this session as such. So, Ben, before we get started, I have a question to you. So, I am an entrepreneur for the past 7 to 8 years, and I've been passionate about HR as such. You've been doing this for decades together, right? Why did you choose human capital management as your area of expertise? And why do you keep doing this year on year? So I want to understand why this industry.
Well, I'll tell you that the story that I have is very different from most people. So probably a lot of people listening in would say, oh, I fell into HR or someone assigned me this and I had to do it as part of my job. And then I just kind of grew to love it. I wanted to be in HR when I was a kid. I didn't know what it was called yet, but I wanted to be in the human resources profession because I had worked with my parents who had a small business and some other companies in my high school years, saw all the problems they had with hiring the right people, retaining them, handling their pay and benefits, all those kind of things. And I'm thinking, even as a young teenager, like, I'm going to go do this thing, whatever that is, and solve that. And I'll always have a job. And when I got into college, someone said, hey, write a paper on this thing called human resources. That sounds super boring. And I get into it and like, wait a minute, this is what I've always wanted to do. So I got my degree in that, worked in the field for several years, and then transitioned about 10 years ago to the research side of this, looking at the trends, looking at what's happening, really staying on top of the technologies and tools that employers are using. Because as we see in the space, all the conversation around AI is an indicator of this. To be successful as an HR function today, you could have gotten by with little to no technology, 10, 20 years ago. Today, that's essential. It's a key part of being able to serve and support your candidates, serve and support your workforce. And so that's what excites me every day, to get up and help HR leaders do that in a better way, using the data, using the research to make a good decision, whatever that next decision might be.
I think that's very true. I was going through your LinkedIn profile, and I saw that in the year 2009, you had tested some ATS. Many of us in this call we were kids when we were in 2009 as such. And, you've been testing ATS in 2009, that's an age where people were trying to understand leave alone what is a cloud. They were just trying to understand, what is a software and how it works, etc. Right? So I can truly see the amount of knowledge you possess, in understanding HR tech. It's which makes me even more nervous to ask you certain things.
Hey, I'm honest, but I'm also kind. There's that blend of things. Maybe it's because I'm Southern here in the U.S., but I blend both of those things together. So don't ever fear to ask me a question if we get a good answer from that.
Sure, Ben. Yeah. So the first thing that I want to really talk about is many CHROs and HRs, the buyers, maybe they won't admit it, but they're afraid to buy an AI product. I think this is a simple point that I want to emphasize, right? And they have various set of reasons, which I really don't want to say whether it is correct or not. They want to be really safe. So AI, we spoke a lot about AI in 2015, 2016. A lot came, but it worked to a certain extent. Again, in 2018, when you authored the book about AI, for HR, your first edition, I believe.
Yes.
Back then it happened. But right now in 2022, ChatGPT came into existence, right? And a whole lot of things are set into motion. So I wanted to understand, is there a hesitation? Are HRs really ready to buy these products? I want to just understand from your perspective on this point.
So a couple of things. Number one, there are lots of companies right now that are using AI tools for everything you can imagine, both within the hiring process and talent acquisition for screening, matching, vetting candidates, trying to figure out who's the right person to hire, all that kind of stuff. That's all happening right now. But we're also seeing some really interesting use cases being done in other areas of the employment process, like safety and workman's comp in the workplace. How do we make sure that we're using some of these AI tools to create a safe environment so our people can do their best work and not have fear of an injury or something else? Pay equity, we're seeing training, coaching, all these areas we're seeing that. Now, lots of companies are adopting this or using this, but there are some who are more hesitant. There are some concerns around some of this, especially when it comes to some of the legal requirements globally around, can we use this to select someone for a job? Now, setting all that aside for 1 second, I'll tell you one of the things we found in our research this year. We do a big study every year, multiple big studies, but one of our big studies every year is on talent acquisition. And one of the things that stood out to me is we asked employers about how they're using AI in the hiring process and what sort of value they're getting. But there was a portion of employers that said, we cannot, or we're not, and we will not use this. And so for that segment of employers, I said, tell me why. What are the things that are holding you back? What are you worried about? And the number one reason there was, we don't want to replace the humans. We want a human in the mix of this decision, which I understand. The second answer was, we don't want to hurt our employer brand. We don't want to put the wrong front out there because the AI is saying things or doing things that we can't always control or predict. And then the third most common reason was because we don't think AI is ready to handle some of the basic recruiting tasks. And what's interesting to me is the second and third answer there: can't handle common tasks, worried about our employer brand. A junior recruiter that we hire onto our team is going to create those same risks. They may say the wrong thing. They may post the wrong thing online. They may mess up this process. They may not be able to handle a common task. And so we're worried about some of these things and placing all this fear and concern on the AI systems when some of those fears have always been there. And again, they'll always be there. If I'm training you up to be a junior recruiter on my team, I have to expect you're going to have a misstep here or there. You're going to mess something up occasionally as part of learning, as part of growing. And we assume that AI has got to be perfect out of the box. And I think that's one of the problems, is that it is a learning system. It's going to pick up things. It's going to learn from signals. And anyway, there's some data points for you on why employers are hesitant to it. But as I started out, there's a lot of companies already that have adopted this, that is using it as their competitive advantage. And we expect to see that gap start to widen as those companies that are using it outpace the others who can't keep up.
That's a great answer, Ben. I think many products are using AI, but we don't tell that we are using AI, but we just give a fast result and they're just happy. It's a slightly direct question. Do you think there is a generational gap in making these decisions? The decision makers are from a different generation that did not use AI. I'll tell you where I'm coming from. 70% of the resumes that we get in Xobin are now created via ChatGPT. The talent, even before they enter an organization, they are using AI to prepare their resume. And then when they come to the job, they use AI with the employer's permission or without, because they are so dependent on it, right? Now, when this generation, they come to the leadership, they're going to make decisions which would favor AI products, right? So my question is, what are the core points that you think from an advisory perspective that we should emphasize to the leaders to carefully decide to use AI? Do you think that's necessary? If that's necessary, how do we go about it?
So when I'm educating and teaching on the use of AI, I'm always careful to say, listen, I'll tell you a story really quickly that illustrates this, and I'll talk about where I think the human part best falls. So Several years ago, I wrote about this story in my book on AI. Amazon had built this algorithm, and it's not the one that most people think about because there was a very public headline about one. This is a different one. So they built this algorithm that allows someone to come in and apply for a job. And let's say Guru applies for a job in one of these areas. It says, oh, look, he has a bachelor's degree in engineering or 3 years at Google. He's probably qualified to work here at Amazon. So it sends you an assessment. You take that assessment. Guru is brilliant. You pass the assessment with flying colors, no problems at all. It then generates an offer to you at the current market rate without any interaction with a hiring manager, no talking with a recruiter. Here's your offer, come work for us. And when I share that example with an audience of HR leaders, of recruiting leaders, like you can see them like shrink back in horror from this. Now, there are some jobs where that kind of automated screening and selection is happening right now, but it's usually more for hourly types of roles and high volume positions. When it comes to an engineer, when it comes to an accountant, something more corporate, those candidates don't expect that. They don't desire that. And we should not be delivering that if we want to really connect with them and encourage them to come work for us. So that sort of thing is happening right now. Now, where does the human fall? Where's the best place for a human to be in the process? Like, well, candidates tell us in the research that they're perfectly okay with AI being used if it's matching them to a job opportunity, if it's helping to screen them in a way that's unbiased, if it's helping them to put their best foot forward and be considered based on that, not just saying yes, no, like shoving them to the bottom of the pile and not giving them a chance to actually be considered. So which means just looking at a resume isn't enough. As you mentioned, some of the new research says that about 70% of college graduates are using ChatGPT and generative AI tools to create and match their resume to a job posting. That means it's going to be even harder than ever to hire from that population because all the resumes are going to look the same. So what do we do about that? Well, we have to have different ways of screening, just like the universities are saying, okay, we can no longer send home this assignment and let you write that report at home. We're going to have to think differently about how we're going to screen you. We need to think differently about how we're screening people because the resume will not be enough. But the good news is when we look at the data on candidates, they tell us they actually prefer, when given the choice of just sending your resume in, or I get to submit my resume and complete some sort of short job-related test, they prefer that second option because it allows them to see what the company cares about, know more about what's important in that job, and show off what they're about, not just based on how well the resume was written or not. So things like that give us some ideas of where AI can be used, where candidates are okay with it being used. Should it be used to, right, move someone completely through the process and just pick the right person and send them an offer? No, absolutely not, especially for those more corporate types of positions. But overall, being used to help match, used to help give them a chance to show what they're about and be judged on that, candidates tell us in the research they're perfectly fine with those kind of uses.
Great answer again. This is something that we do in Xobin. So we have now the capacity to build assessments based on any resume, right? So we don't do just resume parsing, but we parse a resume and quickly create an assessment and check the validity of the resume. And I think that is because it's become clearly a mandatory thing. You see, like AI is also a threat for HR tech companies like us because it allows a founder to create a new business way faster than how much time it took. If it took a year and a half for me to build the first version of my product with all the content in it, it's going to take less than 2 months or way lesser than that for a new person to come in, right? So I think we're all in the keep pushing and keep improving game, to you have a point to make?
I was going to say that is I've actually shared that exact example a couple of times recently. There's a company in the HR technology space, and I won't call them out, but they had built this tool that would allow you to go through and create a job description. Just press, tab on the keyboard, and it starts generating pieces of the job description, and you can generate the whole thing if you wanted to. And they developed this 3 or 4 years ago, and it was really incredible and amazing. And then right now, any one of us can go to ChatGPT and do that same exact thing with no investment at all and create that. And it took them years and hundreds of thousands of dollars of investing in this to build out a system smart enough to do that. So your example is spot on, where things are moving more quickly. That excites me because we'll see some more innovation. But as with, we called it running with scissors in one of our previous companies, like there's a little danger to it. So we got to be careful
Again,
about this.
what was it? Running it? What was it? What was
Running
it?
with scissors. Yes.
Oh, all right.
You always tell
Okay.
your children, don't run with scissors because it's a dangerous thing to
Ah,
do. And the same kind of thing, like there's an element of danger to this. Those companies that are standing up a system, standing up a platform within, 2 months, guess what? I, as a user, as a former buyer of HR technology, wouldn't trust that nearly as much as I would a company like Xobin that's got this background, that's got a history, a legacy of proving value to customers and iterating on the product and bringing new value when you hear opportunities to serve those customers more deeply. Like you have that sort of thing. That's going to be the edge for those players who are already established. Now you can't say, well, this is the way we've always done it and just hold on to your roots because you will get outpaced. But leaning in and saying, like, we're going to keep listening because we know we've got to move quickly in order to be competitive with these other companies. But just being fast to market isn't good enough to solve the problems that most HR and talent leaders have, because as we talked about already, there's a lot of risk in these decisions. It's not as simple as I've got to pull data from this system, put it in that system. It's I've got to pick who's going to be the next person to join our team. And that's a high value decision.
It's a big risk. I think the big risk that as HR tech companies we are taking. I've known some customers who ask me to take a $10 million insurance just in case if things go wrong, So I think the risk is real, right? And, Ben, moving on to the next question. In your book, in Talent Scarcity, you've spoken about talent shortage, right? So where in which, there is less talent that's coming out. At the same point of time, there is also demand. In a country like India, which produces like 25 to 30 lakh engineering graduates alone in a year, right? So that we're talking about 3 million to 4 million engineering graduates. It is coming out every year, right? There is huge amount of talent, right? At the same point of time, there is shortage of talent, right? In many sectors, right? Now, broadly, there is no straightforward solution to it, because if there was one straightforward solution to it, then the problem is not going to be there. So I don't want to ask you how to solve it, right? But you have spent years in thinking of this problem. You would have counseled many CHROs on this problem, many advisories on this problem, right? So now with AI becoming powerful every day, if I can say that, what are your thoughts on this? How can we solve the talent scarcity problem with the upcoming technologies? Any hints here and there, right? In which direction should we look at?
Oh, goodness. So a couple of things that I'll share on that one. So yes, the new book, Talent Scarcity, it looks at, it's North America, really heavy focus. There's also pieces pulled in from all around the world. And so here's a quick example that shows why this is true. So the researchers, the demographics experts around the world say that if a population is going to sustain itself long-term, you need about 2.3 births per family to do that. Well, the last time the US was at that rate was 50 years ago. So we aren't producing enough people to fill all the opportunities, all the roles, all the jobs. The answer so far has been immigration, is bring more people in, but that's a short-term solution, because at some point, those other countries are going to stop giving their people away. They're going to need them themselves. India, as an example, is at about 2 births per family right now. So you're below that threshold. It's still higher than most other developed countries, but India is still below that threshold. And it's generally the trend goes, if you look at Europe, if you look at Canada, if you look at any of the other countries around the world, once that number starts to fall, it just continues that trend for as long as we can see. So that's an example of that. There are other things that factor into it, different decisions around people deciding to work or not because of COVID and other things, but that's a big driver. Now, if that's true, fewer people to go around, what are we going to do about it? Well, automation does play a part there. And a lot of the research shows, hey, this, X millions or hundreds of millions of jobs are going to be affected by automation. Some jobs eliminated, some jobs created. So it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen with all of that eventually kind of falling out. But we know that automation is going to change the number of jobs that are available, period. That's the end of that sentence. Now, if that's true, what do we do about it? Well, when I'm talking to HR leaders, I'm talking to talent leaders, thinking, all right, we've got 2 different levers we can pull. we can recruit more intelligently, we can look more carefully, we can open up our talent pools, or we can keep the ones we already have. We can keep those high quality people who are already performing well, who have the knowledge, who have the expertise that we do not want to lose. And the big thing that I see in the research over and over again, either on the hiring side or the retention side, is we can't use a one size fits all approach and have good results.
Agreed.
The research shows that we have to be more personalized and more tailored if we're going to appeal to this population we want to recruit or that population we want to retain. We have to be more tailored. Not a single human that I know has the ability to juggle all 50 of those variables in their head and to be able to say, okay, let's really do this thing. This is our strategy for recruiting to be able to solve the needs across these different populations. We don't have that ability to do that. AI can handle those complicated calculations, can help us figure out how to tailor this to this population or that one. I'll give you an example. There's a company that we worked with that has a retention prediction algorithm, and it predicts which of your people are going to be quitting. And it looks at over 100 different signals to know if Ben's going to quit or if Guru is going to quit. And what's incredible to me is once they start to see some indicators that someone's going to leave, you can intervene, you can step in, and it will flag the specific transparent things with AI. What transparent factors are driving that? What are the signals? Well, look, Ben probably is getting ready to leave because he hasn't had a one-on-one with his manager in 3 months. The last time he had a pay adjustment was 4 years ago, right? His last performance review went down. Like those sorts of things are indicators that Ben may be getting ready to leave. And if the company wants to keep me, they can step in and make some changes around that to solve for it and intervene. Again, great managers will do that for their teams, but all of us, every single person listening here has worked with a manager who was not so great, who didn't have all that stuff together. And so if AI can help them be a little more capable, a little more informed to do that, that's the future of what that can bring, the value it can bring, and the impact it can have on us as talent leaders, but also on the workforce ultimately as they're trying to do their best work every day.
Okay, that's a great answer. So I'm going to have to listen to this answer one more time, for me to get more points to question, a lot of insights in that answer, Ben. I want to talk about remote work and gig economy put together. So like I said, again, it's a complicated problem. There is no direct answer to it, which is why I'm even asking you. So, for a typical engineering role, beginning role in North America, in San Francisco, someone gets paid, let's say $8,000 to $10,000 a month. Same skill, same communication. In India, they get paid $2,000 a month. There's a 4x pay difference, right? This is point one. Point two, these LLMs, generative AI, is helping bridge the communication challenges that Indians have with Indians or any other growing countries, talent in the growing countries have with companies abroad. So it can change our Indian English to North American English or to British English, right? And make sure it is communicated correct too. Right now, I want to understand. And all of us are now used to working remote, right? Thanks to COVID, right? And otherwise, it would have been completely difficult, right? So, in the future, I'm just considering a world in which there is equal pay, not just across genders, but across all countries and all talent, proper skill standardization, right? Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. Right, level 1, you get this, you go to level 2, you get this, you go to level 3, you get it, 4, you get this, irrespective of whether you are in Africa or in India or in Singapore. It can be anywhere, the pay is there, right? So I think to be able to reach that is a dream, but I don't see it happening, so many companies are still used to working with the same talent in the way they are used to, and they are still asking people to come down to office and so why is this? What am I missing here? Right? So is it a place that we should reach to? Right? Is it a good aspiration to have? If not, what am I missing?
It's a great question. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm qualified to answer this one. That's a really hard one. I'll tell you that the equal pay, like for equal work, I think that's an important call out for anyone listening to this. If you have a team who's in the US and they're substantially similar skill set and deliverables and projects they're working on to someone who's in the Philippines or in Singapore or wherever else, and you're paying one of them a fraction of the other, I would have issues with that, I think. I'll give you an example, like a very real personal example. We have someone on our team that is in the Philippines. She does a lot of admin work for us. She is incredible. Her name is Jessa, by the way. She's amazing. She gets paid what an admin would get paid here in the States because I want her to prioritize our work when there's something comes up. I want her to know that we appreciate her. I don't want her to go anywhere because she's incredible at her job. And so we already kind of practice that method here. But a lot of companies, I agree with you. That's a challenge with that. Even within, if we narrow the scope just to the states here in the U.S., there are companies. There was this weird dynamic, and for some companies, most companies have figured it out. But when things went remote, they're like, do we pay someone less money if they live in this remote region of the U.S. where there's no real job market locally, and we know we've kind of got them trapped in our pay rate, we'll just offer them something less than what we'd offer someone if they're working in our New York office. That same thing was happening there. And a lot of companies said, you know what? No, we should just have a remote pay rate and you decide where you want to live. We're not going to control that or punish you for living somewhere where the job market may be less robust. And companies made that decision here in the States, at least across the board. And so that sort of thing makes me wonder, why haven't they done that if they have teams outside the US? Why haven't they done that same kind of thing? So I don't know the answer beyond that. That's some of the trends I've seen around it, but I agree with you. That's a conversation that I'm surprised hasn't been had more often, especially as much effort and intent as we put into the gender pay gap and things like that. That's a big priority and focus for most organizations. And this other piece of it seems related to me and has not to date been a big part of that.
Absolutely. So I'm the reason I'm asking this question because as a skill assessment company, we assess candidates on the same skills across geography, across different things, right? And we see very interesting trends, and we always have had this question, right? So, and yeah, I think this is a great attempt to answer this question, but I'm going to try and find out this answer on an ongoing basis. I hope someday, if possible, can influence this in some direction. So Ben, I think the last question that I have, you patiently answered many difficult questions. I really didn't want to ask you any easy questions because that's something that anyone can answer. So, but I think the answers were really great. The last question I have is for the fellow HRs. We have many people in our network who are sourcing people, who in talent acquisition, they especially work on sourcing talent, meaning they go to these job portals, they write Boolean search queries, and they
Yes.
take candidate talents, right? Now, many of their job roles are at stake with interesting AI updates, which could be interesting to us, but for them, it's not so interesting. Unfortunately, that is this segment of people, and they are looking to upskill, and many of them are getting out of the HR industry. They are coming to customer success, this, that, right? So my question to you is, if to keep talent in HR, to keep the best talent in HR, and not make them move to sales or marketing, right? How should someone upskill in HR, right? So is there any suggestions you have for them? And broadly, what is going to be the role for HR in future? So
Wow, that's a really incredible question. I actually wrote it down because I want to think more deeply on this because it's one that no one's ever asked me quite like that. I appreciate the hard questions. If I don't have the answer, I'll tell you, but I like being stretched a little bit. So I've appreciated the conversation. All right. So the skills that matter, the skills that are hard for an algorithm to replicate are the human skills. Those are not specific related to HR, by the way. So compassion, creativity, critical thinking, those are some human skills that it's hard to program an algorithm to actually replicate. And because of that, any of us humans listening to this right now, robots, you can ignore it, but any humans listening to this right now, Focus on those things, build those things up in yourself and the team around you, because those things are hard for an algorithm to replicate. Yeah. That's pretty general and broad. Now, something more specific. I've told people for a long time, if your best skill is looking at data and pulling out trends, like, you better find another skill quick, because AI is better than us at doing that kind of thing. The more we have a kind of a 2x2 grid that we laid out that shows which things should be more human, which ones should be automated, happily, with us all smiling and glad that they're automated. Not a single one of us wants to look through a stack of 150 resumes and decide who to call back. And even those who do Boolean, who are amazing sourcers, can find people no one else can find. At some point, just sitting there writing search strings and finding people like that even gets old, right? Building connections, building relationships, finding that point in the person's resume that you can say, hey, I saw this, let's talk about that. And you can generate a conversation from there. That's the thing that sets a human apart from just an algorithm that's blindly reaching out and trying to get people just through sheer volume, trying to get people to respond to inquiries. When I was reaching out as a recruiter years ago, I actually recruited Black Hawk helicopter instructor pilots. Okay, that's how I got started in recruiting. And I learned quickly, I can't send this email out to 20 people because not a single one of them will respond. I've got to find a way to tailor it and reach out. Okay, hey, Mark, I saw that you're also a hot air balloon pilot. Like, that's incredible. Tell me more about that. Hey, Jamie, I saw this thing on your resume. Did you actually know this person? They also were in your same unit in the military. Like, I found ways to connect with people. That's the thing that we're going to have to do. We're going to lean in on those types of things. If you're trying to figure out where your value is, it's in building a deeper connection. The 2x2 grid that we look at is, there's human focus on one end and there's process focus on the other. The more human focused it is, the more we need a human to be doing that. The other part, though, is the x-axis here is we have it's repetitive, it happens, it's routine, it happens all the time, or it's novel and new, it's unpredictable. There's an amazing book out there called Range, and the author talks about unkind learning environments. Most of us work in what's called an unkind learning environment, where there's little to no feedback. The feedback loop is so long, you may not find out for months if you made the right decision or not, right? Every situation is a little unpredictable. You never know all the variables. That's what most of us would say, that's my daily work. That's what I live in. Algorithms, you can't program one to work in that sort of environment. When they're training a model, an algorithm, an AI system, they have it very structured, guardrails. Here's the limited set of variables we're plugging in. We need a prediction on the back end. It's a yes or no. Like, we know quickly if it's a right answer or not. So they operate only within that environment. So if you can train yourself, can work on being okay with uncertainty, being able to make decisions based on this broad perspective of things, not just knowing all the variables, that's things that it's really hard to teach an algorithm to do, and that's going to give you some job security in the future. Now, whether you direct that into, okay, I want to lead a team of TA leaders, or I want to be a process designer in talent acquisition and figure out where we're going to plug in some AI and where we're going to put that human connection in and go overboard, like really go all in on building a deep connection with that candidate so they never forget what it was like interviewing with us. You may find places like that, or within the HR space as well. I talked about pay equity. I talked about safety. Like, there's other areas where you can plug in, but you've got to find that thing that really draws out your best. That's my encouragement to everyone listening, is finding that thing that makes you feel more alive when you've done it, not make you feel like you are kind of drained and dull and, all out of energy when you're finished with that.
Ben, this is probably the best answer that I have had for this question. And I'm very sure this is going to impact hundreds, if not of thousands of early people, who are taking their first career in HR, So I think this is a great answer. With that, I'd like to thank you for spending more than 30 minutes of your time with us. You've been very kind to us. Thank you so much for spending your time. And thanks to everyone who has tuned in with us and who's followed the entire conversation in another episode of Xobin Talks. Thank you so much.